Hey y'all, I'm Mike, the RV inspector and technician,
And I'm Elizabeth. I run our business.
and welcome to the Cozy Camper Podcast. Like, I am allergic to kind of some of those scripted conversations. Oh, hey Dennis.
Hey, Mike.
how are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. I wore my nice shirt for you today. I came ready. It's probably a little bit more just for like hopeful thinking, because you're probably where it's. Are you still in Texas? Okay, so you're in the warm weather now. We just had snow, a lot of snow the other day, and I'm at that point of the year. Pretty much any time past like January 5th, I'm done with the snow, and I live in Colorado, which doesn't jive real well. So this is wishful thinking a little bit too. Plus, I had to represent a little bit. So
I love the Hawaiian RVHelp shirt. I think that needs to be like a limited edition shirt in the RVHelp merch store. Like
it's a one of one right now. So
you can get like the signed Dennis RVHelp Hawaiian shirt.
frame it. Yeah.
Like a basketball jersey.
It.
Yeah. That'd be funny, man. But Dennis, you are the co-founder of RVHelp, right?
I am yes, I am part of the original founding team. My title specifically is head of partnerships. So,
and for the listener, RVHelp is a locator, and we're going to talk about all of this at length. But it's a tool in which RV owners can find vetted and RV professionals to help them on the road. I'm an RV inspector and technician. You can find me on there, and you should find me on there. But Dennis, how did you? I love it when people find me on there. I get excited. I text you and Heath all the time when people. I texted him this morning. I was like, hey, actually, what happened this morning was I posted a story about RVHelp. Somebody sent me a message and said, "Oh, thanks so much for sharing that. I found a different technician through RVHelp." So I took a screenshot and I was like, "That's a lead that you owe me now." I was like, I've gotten one for y'all. But how did you get involved with the RV business at all? Do you have any background in it?
So I hate this term because it sounds so pompous, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. So this is my 6th or 7th startup. I'll say 6. The reason why I say 6th or 7th is because I try to count. I've done more than that, right? But I only try to count the ones that either still exist or had a successful exit that didn't just drop off the face of the earth. And so all of them have really been around software to support small businesses. And last project that I worked on prior to this was a project with Heath Paget, one of the founders. And it was around campground booking. And so that was my first foray into actually kind of learning the lifestyle of RVing. I had yet until this weekend actually been a real live RVer. And we could talk about that later. But so Heath and I had done that, well, not just Heath and I, Heath brought me in on that team. And that was a successful exit. It was sold to Camping World. I stayed with Camping World for a couple of years. And then after I left Camping World, Heath called me back and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing another startup. It's based on, the service side of the industry. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. Specifically, if we're going to go talk to mobile techs and people that are actually small businesses, mom and pop type style businesses, because I really feel like that's my background and that's my strong points."
So and then that's all this is. And I just talked to Steve from Mobile RV Tech. He's another small business owner like myself. He's got social media channels, but we were talking about this just a few minutes ago. It was like, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, even, there was far fewer RV technicians and inspectors out there where, if you were kind of the only guy on the block, sort of the business would sort of write itself. And, now 5 years after the pandemic, when this kind of all exploded, and we could talk all day about how that affected the RV industry, it's a lot harder to run a small business. And I love it that somebody is out here and is like, oh, hey, I want to help you do it, because there's there's not a lot of that out there. It's like, oh, you go to tech school, you learn how to turn the wrench, and then it's like you get out there into the world and it's like, what's the next step? How do I even take money from someone after I finish fixing their RV, you know? So that's an important question to answer that doesn't get answered a lot, and to the detriment of like a lot of new RV business owners. It's tough. But so you and Heath, are like, hey, let's make an RV locator. How did you? I mean, what was the original interaction with like the NRVTA? How did you get involved, sort of in this? Because there's other RV locators. How did you guys get involved in this specific space?
Well, so first and foremost, let me rephrase a little bit if we can. The business wasn't intended or isn't intended to be a mobile tech locator. The business is intended to be a mobile marketplace for RVers to find technicians and inspectors. And, the difference that I see there is that eventually we want to have this scenario where it almost has that Uber feel to it, where it's, hey, I need somebody, either I need them now or I need them, within some certain time period. And rather than just go down a list and call and call and call, I want to be able to, find somebody with certain skill sets, find somebody that is, relatively close to me and has availability, and find somebody that I can trust, that has education, that is insured, that has been in business, whatever is important to them, that has, reviews, so that I can look and see other people that might think like me, or that maybe are around my age or region or same kind of vehicle or whatever, whatever creates the customer confidence in that transaction with somebody. And so, that was kind of the thought process. Like, really, it began with the idea that at the time that we had done like the original research for the business, it was, 21 days, 26 days as an average to take your RV in to get it repaired, whatever the issue was. And so, and that was primarily taking it to a dealership and, having the limited number of bays, the limited number of techs that can work. You've got, all kinds of different factors that are factoring into that initial time to recovery for an issue that somebody has with their RV. Well, we were looking and had known about the schools that were out there that were graduating, educated technicians to be out there and actually go to a customer, be mobile. And we realized that the industry didn't really have a lot of recognition for a mobile tech. And so how do we pair those two? How do we find the mobile techs? How do we pair people to them? How do we make that a resolution for RVers that are out there so that we can have them not miss another RVing season because something's broke and they can't find somebody to fix it? So that was kind of how that came out of it originally. How did we discover the school? Heath had already known Cooper from the past. Heath has got a long line of doing things in the RV space, from podcasts to events to doing something called the RV Entrepreneur, which was basically helping people that wanted to live the full-time lifestyle but be able to work while they were on the road. What kind of businesses could they do doing that? I think that's how he discovered, talking to Cooper with NRVTA. Coop had come to him and said, hey, Heath, we've got this issue. We need to find more work that directly pairs with mobile technicians and get mobile technicians more visibility to RVers. And we think that you could help us with this. And so there were some conversations back and forth about what a platform might look like. And we said, well, we'd really like to do that. I'm paraphrasing, and there's a big gap in here, a lot of conversations that happened in between that. But essentially, then Cooper and the association and the school said, hey, would you want to come and do this for us? And Heath, being the entrepreneur that he is like, what? I really don't want to go to work for anybody. I'd really like to build this in partnership with you guys. So how do we work with the access to the text that you have and our ability to put some money behind it, do the marketing, build the platform, help with, business strategies, like you said, to help with small business owners, like how do we make this better? And then how do we create recognition in the marketplace for people? So that was a long-winded answer, but that was how those things came about. And then ultimately the agreement on the relationship and, the work moving forward from there is kind of where we're at now.
So and I heard you say, and it is not just a locator. I want to be clear about that, but we call it a locator because that's the association used to have one, and that's kind of the legacy that you guys took. But like, I see to your point, you're like, I see all these like different little features that y'all want to break out, that you're beta testing and partnerships and all these things in the app, right? Like all these sort of other things that come out. And like, you're 100% right that like the RV industry has been very slow to react to the rise of mobile technicians. They're very difficult to work with. And because they're set up to work with like, RV dealerships, if you're like, we can have thousands of dollars out in parts waiting for payment, from whatever manufacturer. And if you're a small business, you may not be able to support having, $10,000 out in parts on a net 90 time frame. Like it doesn't work that way. And a simple locator, as well intentioned as it was, and I got business from it before, is never going to close that gap, right? So it's only somebody that's, like I said, I like that y'all are out there doing it. Um, the I'm gonna express an unpopular opinion amongst my peers. I hated the old locators. I hated them so much. And if you're not one of our RV inspector technician brethren, the way that it used to work was, you get some locator pins, you could spread them out, and then, whoever had been in a space for longest got the top billing in the yellow pages, and everybody else was kind of subordinate to them. And I hated it because I was too new. I was too new, and there was no way for me to compete with some of these other people who had been there longer. I had no way to stand out, which is, if we want to go back far enough, Dennis, we could say that the old locator is responsible for the rise of cozy camper social media, because because I was frustrated and I was like, well, I'm not getting any business for this thing, and so I'd been vocal forever, trying to get more out of it, trying to improve it. I see what y'all are doing and what you want to do, and like I'm generally a fan of it. How willing do you think some of like the RV industry types are going to be to like maybe kind of embrace y'all, work with y'all? Like, what's your hopes for that kind of stuff?
Well, I think, kind of going back to the original part of the statement in the beginning is that, they've been slow to adopt, right? Well, in part, that's not any fault of the mobile techs, and that's not really a fault of the industry. When you have big industry, it's much easier for them to work with other large industries, other large partners, because it's really hard to integrate, let's say, 1,000 independent operators. And the issue is that there's no consistency across those operators. So they could easily solve a problem for you where if you were if you were congregated, right, and you all ordered your parts from in the same fashion or the same method, that they could extend an opportunity for you there to not have to carry those costs for those parts, right? But they need an entity to build to or to hold responsible in those, and not 1,000 entities to try to hold responsible, independent entities to try to hold responsible to those situations. So if it's not easy for them, they don't want to do it. And if it's not easy for you guys, you can't you don't have the administrative back office to be able to take the time, because the time that you're spending on the administrative back office is time that you could be turning the wrenches, and those are billable hours, right? And so this is where I think RVHelp falls in between, is that we can actually, work together with 1,000 people, help create some consistencies there, give you a platform to be able to, I'll use an analogy that I just learned, right? Like you've got 30 amps and 50 amps, plugins. And again, all of you feel free to laugh at me, the guy that's at RVHelp just now discovering this, because I'm a tech guy and not the RVer. But I didn't know that I wasn't paying attention, that I needed to know which plug I was plugging into. And I had just gotten a rig, so I didn't have any accoutrement, if you will. But the adapter, makes it available for me to plug into either one, and it wouldn't have mattered, right? So we would love RVHelp to be the adapter to help solve some of those situations. And it doesn't matter what you do or how you do it. As long as you do it through RVHelp, we can plug those two parties together.
That sounds, I'm unpacking that in my brain as you describe it. So that's like, and because that's the administrative side. Like, I know how to turn the wrench, right? The drama for, and so many other technicians know how to turn the wrench. The drama and has always been like, well, hey, like, we can wait for 6 weeks while, XYZ gets this together, or, I can sell you this part right now, and you can try and take it up with them. And what that turns into is like, it's better for, it's one of these times where it's better for the individual tech, but it's probably worse for the industry, because then the owner has to either try and recoup that loss from a manufacturer, or is just going to be mad forever because they couldn't get their dealership or their warranty honored. So, it's pretty rough. But I guess my question would be, how much, when we talk about being that adapter, are y'all wanting to like try to manage like the hourly rate or the book time, or are you just trying to like streamline billing and stuff?
I think streamline is a better word. I don't think that there's an expectation that, having everybody conform to a rate or conform to an hourly. An example on the other side might be, there's some questions about, if I'm always used to dealing with a dealership to get something repaired, and, I have these set hours that I think that people should be able to repair, do the repair in. Well, we also want to be able to help change that mindset, in the sense that, if you're actually asking for the convenience of somebody going out to your customer to get that repair done and get them back on the road or get them back into the season, that's very different than trying to ask them to take it to some place, right, that actually has, all the parts and all the tools and everything in one place. So you have to accommodate for that. And so accommodation, streamlining, like helping those conversations go along, and putting more work into the laps in the hands of mobile technicians and inspectors is really in part the function of a marketplace, right? Like, bring the work into a marketplace where the service providers are, and let the best service providers and technicians and inspectors actually be able to service those customers as directly as possible. So you want to get out of the way a little bit of those transactions. But the other thing that I think, a locator doesn't do that a marketplace does do, is the locator doesn't necessarily always look for or give the customer the best tools to be able to find what they're looking for. And a marketplace does change some of that. It creates more value for the user that's using the marketplace. And so I think, that's an opportunity.
So how in RV helps view, like, what sort of tools are available to like the consumer to help make that decision?
So right now, the first steps that were taken were allowing the service providers, and I'm just going to generalize that to lump inspectors and technicians together, and that might not be fair, but just to keep the conversation smooth and going, is, the service providers being able to pull in their reviews that they have, primarily from Google right now, but also create the opportunity that they can have their customers put reviews onto the platform. One of the other great things about that for a service provider is, when you put reviews into Google, those are Google reviews. And when you put reviews into RVHelp, we ultimately want those to be your reviews. So if you ever do leave the platform, we ultimately would like for you to have the opportunity to take those with you if you wanted. So those are, but that's going towards the service providers. Let's talk about the customer being able to look and see those reviews, being able to see location, distance, but also being able to see certifications and other, like, the descriptions, the time that a little bit more lengthy description of, like, what kind of work, how long you've been in business, those types of things I think are also helpful. We'll continue to try to survey customers to find out what else is really interesting and how they make their decisions. Like for example, I guess availability is going to be is going to be the real key coming up next, because yes, somebody can just, in some cases, some people can just go Google, service provider near me, and they'll get a list of mobile technicians. That's another reason that the platform is actually helpful, because Google doesn't identify mobile technicians as a category yet, and so that's a difficult thing for some providers to actually take advantage of. But the idea of, like, having to call down through that list and just call, get a voicemail, call, get a voicemail, call, get a voicemail, call, get a voicemail. I mean, I understand people are busy and have to work, but from the customer standpoint, that's a really frustrating situation. And so, we want to try to figure out how to resolve or help alleviate those situations as well.
So and we hear it all the time, and we end up going to, like, I'm in Austin, or New Braunfels technically, but we end up going to Houston all the time. And the thing about Houston is that it's 2 hours away from Houston. So, like, if you go to Katy, it's a 2 hour drive. I had to go to Galveston the other day. It was a 4 hour drive. And, what I hear all the time is, well, I found, and I don't know what system they used, but it's like, oh, well, I started, like, call, 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 call. And then you were seventh down the list because of, we were maybe ranked a little bit higher because we have so many positive reviews and certifications. But then, we were 200 miles away. So, it ranked us a little bit further down. All that to say, like, yeah, I ended up going to Galveston. I ended up going to Katy, Conroe in the last couple of weeks, and it costs the client probably 30% more because they have to pay for the travel time to go out there and do it. And so, for me, I'm like, well, what's our company's policy? And we have, my wife works for the business. She's the one who answers the phone, but, like, we spent the money, bought a phone system where it calls her and then it calls me, and then it'll ring back and forth between us a couple times. And then, like, then it'll go to voicemail, but it'll also instantly send a text message that says, hey, we're going to call you back as soon as we can. But, like, we were even talking about that, and I was like, would it be worth $20 a month to, like, hire an answering service for, like, those 3 or 4 calls a month where we're both out of pocket, we can't answer the phone, and just, like, hey, to talk to someone on the phone? And because, like, I perceive a lot of frustration from both the clients and the manufacturers, and, like, just trying to find someone that will go out and do the job. And if you can actually get someone on the phone, what is their professionalism level, right? Like, how do we work with this? And, like, for us, we have the benefit of, like, social media, where if there's a problem, I can just reach out to, like, Lippert on social media and be like, hey, I'm having this problem, and then they can make it go away. But 99% of providers and customers, they're not going to have that advantage. So I think it seems like there's real value in, like, you just talked about what would make it beneficial for the client, and I agree. But I think that kind of verification system probably will help the manufacturers as well, because it's like, all right, well, maybe they're willing to pay travel for someone who's 40 minutes away but has 300 Google reviews and is a master certified technician and has whatever else, versus, like, someone who's untried and untested, but is, like, across the street. And I can understand why, a manufacturer would want to make that decision from a business perspective. And that's probably the person who's going to do the volume of business and is most likely to scale their business anyway. Somebody that's put that much time and work into it. And, like, for me on the other side, because you guys are behind the scenes and you're doing that's the difference from the locator to the marketplace, right? Is, like, connecting kind of those high level dots. Not to say you should never hire a new inspector or a new technician, but, that's not the case either. Because, like, maybe, like you said, like, availability, right? My biggest challenge right now is that I'm a sole practitioner and I book typically 7 to 14 days out. And, maybe some people are willing to wait for that, but maybe, it's Dennis and he's going to Phoenix this weekend to buy a Class C motorhome and he needs an inspection right now. And he can't wait for Mike for 14 days, right? I think that's a valid metric too. And it's got to be challenging to like try and like attack all these moving pieces to find something that's at least equitable for everyone. But what is like from y'all's perspective, because I have like a selfish view of what I think is best, right? But like from y'all's perspective, from like the strategic point, what's like the optimal kind of like outcome? Like what do you guys want to see if the genie came, gave you the wish, like what do you want to see as the optimal outcome for RV help and the practitioners and technicians on board?
Yeah, I mean, whatever the simplest way. I mean, it really kind of go back to that analogy of Uber. I would love for somebody to be able to, whatever's important to them, whether it's time, distance, money, experience, whatever it is, but to be able to alleviate the idea of, hey, have me. It seems so outdated to say, I've got to make 10 phone calls to find somebody that satisfies one of those things for me, or whatever's most important. To your point, if it's an immediate need for, hey, I've got this vehicle and I want to buy it, but I really want to get it inspected, but there's two other people behind me that are willing to buy it and maybe willing to buy it without an inspection because they don't know, right? They don't know they should get it inspected. I'm on the side of the road. I need somebody or something now, right? I'm in a campground. I've got to get back to work and my slide out won't slide in, right? Like I can't take it down the road. Like I need it now. There are situations that you might, sacrifice experience or, tenure, if you will, for expediency, right? Like I got to get this done now. There's situations where it's like, hey, this thing's been broken for a while. I keep meaning to get around to it. But I'd like to save a little bit of money, because I don't want to spend all that kind of money. So maybe I'm willing to wait in line or, get somebody that if they'll give me a break, I'll wait longer to get it done. Whatever the reason is, right? The wish is that you can find that you can get it done without having to go through a long series of phone calls to try to accomplish that. And so I just feel like, somebody that likes technology and feels like technology solves a lot of problems. Let's go back to the example that you just gave real quick. Like, hey, I'm out in the field and somebody calls. And what kind of demeanor do I have? Or I don't want this person to feel dismissed that's calling me. Like I don't want their business, but I'm literally upside down holding a phone, cradled in my, shoulder while I'm trying to fix something. That's not a great experience for the customer, and they might feel dismissed, and you might be very professional, but you might not sound professional in that moment, right? But that's because you don't have that call center, or you don't have that admin person behind a desk that can take the time to pick up the phone and ask. And so you've got all these situations in between. So the genie would be, how do we create that one situation where one person calls, they say, this is what's important to me, and boom, you're we've got that person. We know that they're available and they can come to you.
And so like right now, and it's a little different there's a world of difference from the worldview for the like the RV inspector and like the RV technician, right? Because the as an inspector, it's like, all right, well, I can only do one job a day, and like my job is to like book out as many days as I possibly can. Whereas a technician can take a wide variety of calls and can kind of squirrel them in, and maybe doesn't want to go as far away, and can specialize, can only do like, I only fix air conditioners, or I only do aqua systems, whatever it is. How are y'all? And I think that the demand for most repairs, I would say, well, like I think you hit the nail on the head. So there's kind of a couple different sizes of repair. There's like, hey, my air conditioner doesn't work. It's 100 degrees out. I need somebody right now. And then there's, like we get a lot of our inspection calls are, hey, I'm ordering it from the factory. It's being built. It'll be here next month. Can I get on your calendar for a day? And then, if we need to move it later on, we can. That's actually, people are starting to ask us to go to Elkhart to do the inspections. But anyway, how would y'all, like, how do you, I totally get the what you're driving at. How does one like graphically do that on a website to try and like tease out like, hey, how can I find the technician who's available first? Because like right now it's kind of a metric I think of like distance and Google reviews and certification level, but how do you break out some of these other factors?
I think you know this part is the old way of doing it. Just ask them, right? Ask them, try to ask them more upfront. What's the urgency of the work that they need done? What are they looking for? What's most important in this repair? Is it, value, time, experience, whatever? And of course, people will tell you whatever they think that they want they want you want to hear to get those things done. But at least it's a start to kind of categorize it and help find the solution that fits their issue. So I think that's the way. But at the same time, you know, I think experience helps us with this too. So those people that have been in the field, we're trying to listen as much as we can. What we're trying to find is feedback that's not a pitch specifically for their style of business. Like, so how do I take your experience, Mike, and say, how do I apply that across the whole industry? Right. So what works for you? What are the best aspects of what's worked for you that should work for everybody? And that's the really hard kind of diamond in the rough to try to find. So,
And that's what's tough is because like Cozy Camper has become like its own thing, right? Where, not that we're not interconnected to these other places, but like a lot of our marketing is like, hey, we don't care how long it takes Mike. We want Mike to come out and do the inspection. We'll wait for 2 months if we have to, and the virtue of that is like we have developed, like we have relationships with the manufacturers and the dealerships, and so it's like, we're very different than a lot of other RV inspection shops, and like we're like it's on our roadmap to start hiring RV inspectors in the next 12 to 24 months to come and kind of work for us under the umbrella, because there's a little bit more work than like I can do. And like what I'm afraid of is that people hear that and they're going to hear like, "Oh, I should move my locator pin to Austin because then I'll be as busy as Mike." And it's like, "Well, no. That's not what's happening." Right? Like what's happened is that I've spent time building a reputation in a business, and so like the people are, a lot of people, or even if they don't know who we are, once they get into our funnel and we send them the videos and they talk to us on the phone, they're like, "Oh wow, I didn't know it was like that. I'm like totally willing to wait for this person to be ready to come out and do my inspection." But that's not going to work for everyone, right? And it's not even going to work for, if I tried to pick up Cozy Camper and move it to Florida, that would be a real challenge because there are a trillion RV inspectors there. And like, even with everything we've done, if I was going to try and like recreate that genie in a bottle in Florida, I don't have the ability to quit. So I would stay there long enough to where it would eventually be successful. But it would be a challenge. So like when I see things like, hey, how should it should be this way for everyone. I'm like, well, no, it shouldn't. Right. Like, and it's like in Central Texas, we can say like, oh, 100 miles is a good radius for an RV inspector. But if you're in Florida, that's like the width of the state. So, and you have to drive through a swamp to get to the other side of Florida. Right. So like it doesn't make sense in that case. We're about to go to Illinois, and then somebody said in the Midwest, I think they're in like Nebraska or something, and they talked about how they have no choice but to drive like 200 miles each way because the dealerships are spread out over such a wide area. And so it's like, all right, well, if everywhere else in the country the service radius is this, does it make sense for the service radius to be that way in the plains? Like, no, it doesn't, right? So there's like so many different like little threads that you can start to pull on. And then it's like, well, some customers, like if they're buying a $300,000 motorhome, they're willing to pay more. If somebody wants to buy a $14,000 travel trailer, you're not going to charge them the same amount because they're not the same customer. So like it turns into like you start pulling on threads, and it turns into this like this absolute mess that you're trying to decode. And like I've watched y'all like in the background, like trying to like, key in the right sequence. And it's tough, man. Like y'all are catching a lot of criticism about locator distances, and Dennis is like, "Oh, this was a surprise to me. I didn't know we were catching all this guff." Um, and that's kind of why I'm interested in like what is the end goal? Because like what I see, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion amongst my peers, but like I see like a lot of like, hey, this is the way we've always done it, and I'm mad that we're not doing it that way now. And kind of like what I'm trying to like see from y'all is like, well, what's the vision? Like if RVHelp can create a system where somehow, and I'm not a tech guy, so I don't know, but like we can kind of like, hey, is this a prestige motorhome buyer? Or is this someone who just wants to make sure the walls aren't falling out of their RV? Is this a guy that needs to fix it today? Or is this somebody that can wait for 2 weeks? Right. And if you can like 10x or 50x how much traffic comes to the website, and it sounds like you guys have already had like a pretty big increase in like the number of people. I don't.
It's been really well received from the from the RVers in particular. And I think you were just going at really what I wish I would have said better, like closing that gap between what the customer wants and where the access to what they want is. I think one of the things that we, maybe even just specifically me, don't say well enough is the idea is that you've got this customer base over here that you want to work with, right? But they don't know. There's so much that they don't know about working with a mobile tech. And you and I talked about this actually when we met up in Austin, and I showed you a list of like questions that people had, and you answered one for us. It's like what to expect when I call a mobile tech, right? Like how long is it going to take? Can they do the work there? Do they have to order the parts? Do they have the tools? Like there's so much that they don't know. You guys know it, right? As the technician or as the inspector, but your customer that you want to work with doesn't know. And they're comparing that to, do I go to a dealership or do I try this thing that's called a mobile tech? And so we're trying to bridge that gap and close it so that people are like, oh no, this is, and I'll say something that's probably going to be unpopular. I would love for people to, especially people that aren't close to a dealership or I would love for people to think as mobile techs is option number one. I'm just going to say it that way. Like, and inspectors, I would love for people to think like, hey, everybody that buys a vehicle, right, buys a vehicle if they're not a mechanic with some unknown. So I would like for people to buy with more confidence because they know, because they hired an inspector. Not because they're looking for some imperfection or tiny thing that didn't get done right, that should be get done right, that I can try to ask the dealership to take a bunch of money off of it to, make it a price negotiation. It's more of a confidence thing. Like, let me know I'm buying this thing. I know things are going to go wrong with it. Kind of give me a list of what's possibly going to go wrong first. From a mobile technician, hey, I know that it's going to take forever to get this done just because of availability. There seems like a lot more availability from a mobile tech side. Why wouldn't I give that a try? And what do I have to worry about when I try to work with a mobile tech? Well, the answer hopefully is nothing. You don't have to worry about anything. Like, maybe a scenario of ordering parts or some scenario like that, which hopefully we can resolve, right? But there shouldn't be any reason why you don't. And so I think that's a big part of it. So, but what happens is, let's go back to the service area. What works for somebody in Nebraska doesn't work for somebody in Florida, doesn't work for somebody in Houston, doesn't work for somebody in Montana, doesn't work for somebody in California. And so trying to figure that out, like the service area, what we thought was a good way to move away from the pins, because it gave you an area. It is how the industry charges, right? Like, hey, I'll go anywhere within a 50-mile radius or a 100-mile radius. So if that's what you'll do, then why don't we just call that your service area and we display that? Well, you just brought up a really good point of why that might work here, but not work there. And it might be a different distance from one location to the next. So, yeah, it's been tough, and we keep trying, and we'll get it right. But it is a try and fail or try and succeed scenario. And but the one thing that I know that we are doing right is we're creating more visibility. So more questions get asked, more people are coming, more people are asking, and so there's more information to be able to track and pay attention to and act on.
And you're like RVHelp as an entity is, what, like 6 months old, right? It's and that's kind of my thing is, people ask me, for example, and this is a parallel. People ask me about RV inspections, and even my own understanding and perception of the service has evolved over time. Like we talked about it, I had a punk rock phase a couple of years ago where I was just throwing grenades at the RV industry, and now I'm trying to be a little bit more friendly because I don't perceive like a vast conspiracy. And it's like, all right, well, cool, now that I've matured a little bit in this space, maybe I want to help define what an RV inspection, what the industry actually is, right? Because though it's a but even like within that space, I perceive it to be kind of this like prestige service. Whereas somebody else might kind of perceive it like that's like a blue collar trade thing. You kind of go in and blast through it in a couple hours, and it's a little bit different. And it's very different, like you said, like in Florida or Montana, and also, and this doesn't get talked about enough. Especially if you're an RVer, you become aware that culturally the United States is very different as you move across it. So, every time, and I'm not making a political statement, but like I'm always surprised when I go to Illinois, it's where my family is from, how many people are still wearing masks. Because in Texas, no one is wearing a mask. And like you'll see people that are, not that nobody down here is conscious of germs, but like there's far more people in Illinois than there are in Texas. And so like you're kind of reminded, you're like, oh, well, this is kind of culturally different. And you see that at dealerships too, even in Texas, as you move from one place to another, you'll see just little cultural differences from one place to the other. In the Midwest, the dealerships have generally been pretty friendly to RV inspectors in my experience, because people in the Midwest don't like to say no, and they don't like everybody picks on our neighbors to the north, but they're very polite, right? So it's like, so whereas maybe it's a Texas thing because they had to tame the frontier, there's a little bit more standoffishness, right? The individualism, not universally, but like we see it differences, just the difference from San Antonio to Austin in like the dealership, and the client that's coming from those two places is very different. And so when we talk about like finding a solution, like, oh yeah, how should RV inspectors be found? Well, how do you actually parse all of those things into an actual graphical user interface? And so, it's like, well, this group isn't going to like it if we stack inspectors by location, and this group isn't going to like it if we stack them by review. And this part of the country doesn't care about reviews, and that part of the country does, and this part of the country doesn't care about price, and that one is very price conscious. And so, it's like, golly, like, so, how do you actually parse this? And then as I was thinking about this, and we kind of talked about it before, you start to like optimize systems that shouldn't exist. And it's like, well, how, what is the relevant data to make this work? And like, how do you actually get a client to kind of like, do you need to have a click through, right? Like, how fast do you need this repair? Like, without cluttering it up too much. God, dude, I don't envy you for having to walk through that minefield, because it seems simple, but if you just revert to being a locator, you're going to have all the problems that the old locator had while you're trying to generate new business and partnerships, right? So if we have a meeting coming up with a RV rental chain about some social media stuff, and it's like, all right, well, let's say I pitch them, hey, there's this RVHelp thing and it's amazing, and you have like the old legacy locator, and then they start using you and no one answers the phone. Right? So like they're not going to keep using it, right? And
Or they might not use it at all. It's not just to keep using it, it's a last resort. It takes it down the list and says, okay, this isn't really a viable solution for us, right? Because we can't get the help that they have a customer. To your point, rentals. I think it's a great opportunity to come into to bring work into the mobile technicians scenario. The used market in creating relationships where that could be much more valuable to bring an inspector into. But if you're trying to, this is back to the big companies like to work with big companies, right? They recognize each other. Big company and a bunch of little small companies is a lot more difficult. Those are situations where that first scenario, like you get one, maybe two shots at it, right? So the first time they try it, if it works, great, we'll try it again. If it works a second time, oh, now we're starting to create confidence, right? But if it goes the other direction, hey, we tried it, we couldn't find a tech in the area for our customer, or the techs that were there didn't respond, like you might get a chance to defend that and say, hey, this is what went wrong, we can fix it, it'll be you get a second chance. You might not, you might get one shot at it. So that's another part of it. Like we're trying to make sure that these relationships and these desires are out there to bring more work into that sphere or that world. But the question is, who's going to make it available for them? So,
and this is what I think you're kind of working against and there's a technician in my area, and I know he's a great technician. He will not answer the phone when you call. If you call his voicemail, on his voicemail, he'll say, hey, I don't answer the phone. Leave a voicemail, and sometime in the next 2 weeks, I'll get back to you. And that's not unlike this kind of like legacy dealership thing where it's like, oh, drop your RV off. We kind of have an appointment. Some point this year, we'll finish your warranty thing. And I would imagine if we had like yearly surveys about this behavior, I would imagine that the market is maybe at one time that was an acceptable kind of behavior. Like, oh yeah, we can wait for 6 months to get my RV back, and I understand that I'm buying an RV. But given how many more people are living in their RV full time and the price of the RV increasing, I can't imagine that the sentiment for waiting 2 weeks to 6 months has improved. I can only imagine that it's gotten worse. And so like, if you're that guy that has like, oh yeah, I'll call you back sometime in 2 weeks, I don't know that you're going to be successful 5 years from now when there's a marketplace that connects people right now and has some kind of metric to decide who's available soon, right? I don't know that you're going to be successful. And here's kind of the thing: I don't know that you should be successful if that's your metric, and that's kind of the thing that's tough for a lot of. And I talk to other RV business owners. I'm like, well, not everyone is going to be successful. Like, not everyone should be successful. And like, that's the nature of it. Like, people that can embrace change and like, look, I heard this person talking the other day. He talked about small steps, long vision. And so it's like, all right, well, I see RVHelp doing this right now. I can't imagine that what RVHelp is doing at month 6 is going to be the same operation they have at year 6 or month 60, right? I imagine it's going to be a completely different thing, and we're going to see like multiple iterations of it come and go and change and
as we
do
should,
all
if we're
these
going
other.
to be successful, because the market changes, the customer changes, the expectation changes. So like there should be iterations of the company over a 60-month period, definitely.
Well, even like we were talking today, because like I strongly prefer inspections. That's what I'm known for. That's like our thing. But I'm also a technician, and so we're watching the news and we're seeing the market struggle and we're reading about tariffs. And historically, luxury products like recreational vehicles are some of the first things to struggle. And so we were like, all right, well, if we enter recession, we're going to have to backtrack and focus more on RV tech work because RV inspections will slow with the market. That's the nature of economics, right? And whereas things are broken all the time, and they will always need to be fixed. So there's probably a little bit more availability of work there. But like even when you get down to the tiniest micro little, I was talking to like we were talking to Steve today. He's like, yeah, sometimes my service area is big, sometimes my service area gets real small. Like he found in Michigan, he needed to have a super small service area because he was so busy. When he went to Houston, he found that his service area needed to be much larger. And it's like that the thing is gonna change, and like I want it to change. Like I'm waiting for like Heath to call me and be like, hey, we invented the like RV telepathy, and so we're gonna somehow know, what an RV buyer's preferred you know priorities are, and we're gonna transmit them telepathically to you so that you're gonna know uh what it is. And like y'all are harvesting like email addresses and phone numbers and all that stuff, and I'm like, oh well, cool, because now they can sign in, they can like keep my contact information there. Maybe in the future we'll have like work orders or whatever else there so they can be tracked. um, to me it seems like pretty reasonable. uh, but change is hard, man. And we had a saying when I was a cop. I'm gonna tell you right now, I love other cops. There is no bigger bunch of whiners than law enforcement, right? Like they hate everything. They don't like the new uniforms, they don't like the new cars, but they wanted new cars for years. They bought the wrong brand of rifle, and then when you react to an officer complaint, like, okay, I heard you guys, you don't want to work 10s, you want to work 12-hour shifts, so we make a 12-hour schedule, and then you find out the only thing they hate more than 10-hour shifts is 12-hour shifts. you know so but I'm not dismissive of kind of those perceptions. How do you react when you hear kind of the negative feedback from the customer or the practitioner? Like, what is y'all's kind of um, your internal dialogue?
Well, I know I can tell you from Heath and Josiah's standpoint, it's they want to solve the problem as fast as they can solve it. They want to make people happy. They want to they want the experience to be something that is memorable for them in a good way, not a bad way. And so um one of the things that I hope for as we continue to move forward is to make some of those decisions you know based on actual numbers or facts or trends. So you just covered a lot of stuff right there, like you know where are sales going, what markets are performing better than others, where do you see trends in repairs because of weather, climate, road conditions, right? Like we all know that there's certain highways that you can go down and get beat up really quickly in your vehicle. I just think that there's scenarios that we can use actual information. An example would be, I love the fact that now we can really start to pay attention to where are the searches coming from, like what areas of the country are more of the technician searches coming from, where are the more of the inspector searches coming from, um, you know how many profiles did they look at, what were they looking at in that profile. So like we can answer more of those questions with actual facts of what's going on, and then we can start to share that and make decisions based on that. And so I'm grateful for the fact that I think that that's one of the next things. Like you talked about, we collecting emails, and it's basically just emails, not phone numbers, unless they volunteer a phone number, but emails in creating an account. And when they create an account, then they can do things like you said, like they can favorite your listing. And in particular, since you're somebody that may travel, or other people that do travel more full time, you get somebody that you gave them great service and they go back to look for you and you're not there anymore. Like, the ability for them to save it to their account. And we had a great feedback on this. It's like, well, how is that any different from like bookmarking their website? Well, technically it's not, except that they have an expectation of, like, when you go to look for money, where do you go to look for money? In your wallet, right? Or at your bank, right? And so if we can create the expectation of, where do I go look for that information? Oh, I go to my RV Help account. That's kind of where we want to go, like to create that expectation. If I need that I go look to at RVHelp for it. That's why they can put their, their rigs information in there. Now they can save their, their favorite service providers that they've worked with. There'll be other things that we add to that create value in them coming back to RVHelp, to look at that account and use that account. And then the more that grows, the more information we have, the more that we can understand and we can help and we can market towards. There was a conversation that I threw out there that was in a social group that said, we want to be able to send reminders to them like, hey, it's time to winterize your rig, or it's time to, get ready for camping season. And a service provider said, well, that's really our responsibility. And I agree, it is. It's your customers that you've worked with. It's great to continue communication with them, but we also have customers that aren't any one service provider's customer, that are just coming in. And so we want to help you guys by reminding them, these are great things for you to think of. Hey, if your rig's over, what is the average time of an ownership for an RV before they change and move over? So if we know that they put in, if it's 5 years and we know that they put in 2019, now would be a good time to tell them, like, hey, if you're thinking about buying, don't forget about looking at an inspector, right? So if we have that information, there's more that we can do with it. And so, I think those are some of the things that we look forward to the marketplace being able to do. But again, thanks for saying, yes, the organization is roughly 6 months old. But the site and being live to the customer is only about 60 days old. So, we're still collecting that information. It takes time.
Yeah, and as you were kind of describing, you're like, oh, I want to be able to do this, that, and the other thing. The thought that occurred to me is I was like, it would be amazing. So if Dennis, you just bought a motorhome, right? They're the company did a Thor motorhome. It would be amazing if you could go on your profile, enter the VIN, right? And then let's say 6 months from now, some you hire me to come out and fix your air conditioner. And then you came through RVHelp, I can make a note that says, hey, I went to this VIN and I replaced the fan motor on the front air conditioner, right? And then here's the part number that I used. And then you continue on your travels. And then 6 months later, something goes wrong with that air conditioner. You solicit a different tech through RVHelp. They log in, they see, oh, hey, this VIN number has, some other technician came and installed this part. I can see it now in a way that, wouldn't have been possible before. And I'm not like saying that you should do that. I'm saying like that kind of thing you should do that actually. But that sort of thing is possible with like a large marketplace like that, where it's like, and like you said, like a lot of customers, like, yeah, we have a CRM and we send messages out like, hey, you should check your seals. But like a huge number of my clients get inspections and then they go somewhere else. They don't live here anymore. So they're not really my clients, and they might be yours. They might turn up in California and they need something else, or they drove their RV to California and they decide they don't like it, so they're going to sell it. Now they need a new inspection. So they're going to find somebody local. Maybe they, now they have the ability to, mine rang earlier too, but like they can find another technician, or maybe they can send me a message and ask if I have a recommendation, whatever the thing is. I see a lot of value in something. To me as a practitioner, I see a lot of value in something like that, is kind of what I'm trying to drive at. And I see that there is really any opportunity to share information is a good is a good thing, in any way that we can use to like vet. Because even like you were kind of driving at, well, people don't know what to expect. A problem that I'm currently encountering, for example, is that there is someone in Austin who says they're an RV inspector and they're not. And they are fraudulent. They are doing RV inspections. They're doing something they call an RV inspection, and they are making a mess. And I'm having to deal with that problem. And the reason that is occurring is because the public is not aware of the difference in certification, and they don't know. And if you Google Austin RV inspection, they are commonly ranked above us. And so, and Google, yes, not all the time, but some of the time they do. I don't know how. And this person I know to be a felon out of Washington State. So that's the law enforcement. That's the law enforcement coming at me right there. I know everybody's criminal history, but no. So like I know this to be the case, and like the public doesn't know. And so I'm like, well, if there's one entity that can help educate the public, like at scale, and then connect that educated public to practitioners, it seems eminently reasonable to me. And like as an RV owner, I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. And like just so you know, Dennis, like we have our social media channels. I commented, or one of us in our team commented more than 40 times this week. Go to rvhelp.com to find a technician. Like, hey, do you service Pennsylvania? Go to rvhelp.com to find a certified inspector near you. Do you go to Florida? Go to rvhelp.com to find a certified technician. Like, oh, like we were talking today about like getting a bot where if somebody asks that question, we can the bot will just send them, a link. Because
well, first of all, I appreciate it, but hopefully the inspectors in Pennsylvania, in Florida, and everywhere else appreciate the fact that you're sending them their direction too. So, and helping them, like creating confidence in the badge. That's something that I've talked about with Kelly at the school, is like, how do we, back in the day, you used to have it was the ACE certification for the automotive world. And if you weren't getting something done at a dealership, you had to have, at least you had to go get it done at an ACE certified mechanic. And so, where do we, it's not as big of a thing today, but I think that's something that needs to happen in this industry, is like an understanding of, hey, you're looking for this badge and here's why you're looking for it. You're looking for the NRVIA badge, or you're looking for the RVTAA badge, and here's why. And, a great place to be able to find those people or those certifications, you want to look for those and others, hopefully go to rvhelp.com to look.
Right. And the public, I have seen, like, they react really positively to that message. Like, I think you came to like one of our seminars at the RV show, and like when I get to stand there and say like, hey, if you need a RV technician or inspector, every single person on this list is verified in person, they're certified, you can see their background. They love it. Like, they eat that stuff up. Like, did you see how many cell phones came out to take a picture? Right. And like, scan the QR code so they can see it. Like, the public is there, but like, it's not going to happen overnight. And to your point, like, so, okay, we say like, hey, go to rvhelp.com. And we were having this conversation with the inspectors, and it's like, all right, so I'm one guy that has like a medium-sized social media page, right? Like, I'm not Kim Kardashian, but like we are what is considered a niche influencer by the book, right? And so it's or a micro influencer. And so it's like, okay, cool. I had, when I did this presentation, I was like, hey, look, I did 1.6 million impressions this month. And every single one of my impressions was somehow RV inspection adjacent, or it was directly RV inspection. You should get it. And it's like, well, there's only 300 million people that live in the country. So if if we could just do this 300 times, then everybody would have been touched one time by this message. So like, the road from like where we are to everybody knowing what RV Help is and the value of the badge, it's not short, but it's not as long as we.
Yeah, it's not as far away, but it is, like, to your point, so it's not just one touch point, right? It's something, I forget what the statistics are, but it's something around 6 to 10 times somebody has to see something and recognize it before they'll actually take action on it. And so, yeah, we have to continue to kind of get that out there and put it in front of them and create confidence. But then the next side of it is something that we talked about before. It's like, when they do call, when they do, reach out, we have to make sure that they get connected with somebody, and we have to make sure that they have a positive experience, because then they will share that. And as they share that, then that creates more consumer confidence, is really what we're looking for. Both from the inspection side and a mobile technician side, is consumer confidence that this will solve my problem. This will, help me in this situation. So it's one step at a time, one foot in front of the other.
Well, you guys, do you think that you'll ever have a sort of like where the manufacturer can leave that kind of feedback too, for like, so if Keystone wants to leave a note kind of like behind the scenes in the CRM to be like, hey, we're Keystone, these guys are great, then like Airstream can see it and say like, oh, Keystone said these guys were great, we should interface with them. Is that
There's so much. There's so much that I wish that I could tell you about about what we're working on in behind the scenes. I can tell you that you know I can tell you that that's a really great idea. And I'll give you, so since I can't tell you that, I'll give you an exclusive on the other side. We bought a rig. You just mentioned we bought a rig, an RV that we plan on getting wrapped with RVHelp. And the idea is to put me in the RV and to go to campgrounds. And then when we get to campgrounds, we'd like to bring a service technician out and do a day or a half day in those campgrounds. And at RV Help's expense, to try to help RVers and to help them see what it's like to work with a mobile technician. Because to your point, when we met at the Austin Expo, one of my favorite things, and one of the things I feel like is so impactful for RV owners, is just being able to see Mike. Right, when I say, hey, I'm with RV Help, and here's Mike Murphy. He's one of our inspectors and technicians on the platform, and people are like, oh, well, cool. And you come out to me, and like that almost always gets said. You come out to me, yes, we do. You'll come to where the rig is, and you'll inspect it. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just this moment of clarity for them. That's like, oh, that's so much easier. Let me just do that. And so how many of those situations can we create, over this next camping season to try to create that awareness and confidence in being able to do those transactions?
if you do it enough and quickly enough, it's like I said, every time we put it before the public, people are, it's kind of like I say this about inspections, is I'm like, there is no real counter argument to inspections unless you have negative intent, right? Like you might find like, hey, this inspector has a problem, but like conceptually, like, oh yeah, we probably should have this thing looked at before we buy it. That's reasonable, right? And unless you have a negative financial interest where to smear that idea, there's not really a counter argument. And the same is true like for RV Help. Like, hey, we want to make this like semi-egalitarian like marketplace where people can find other practitioners. Like every single person is into it. And I don't want to, when I see negativity, when I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy's mad because this doesn't work, it's like, all right, well, this is what they're driving at. So like I want to give you all space to actually try to create that marketplace. Like I'm really looking forward to the day where you pull up in the RV the help uh, the wrapped RV Help RV, and you didn't have it inspected by me, which is insulting.
We could talk about how that went down. I made a lot of phone calls and ended up making even more phone calls like last minute. I was one of those people. Like, in all fairness, the deal happened within a couple of days, and we were trying to figure it out. And thank goodness that area of the country is very busy and has a lot of work. Let's just put it that way. And
I did talk to one of the inspectors that you called. They told me that you called, and they were just too busy. They couldn't get to it. And I was reminded when I told you I was in I was in training when I was in the police, and at the academy there was a saying like, "Hey, you are being constantly evaluated." And it's like, all right, so Dennis himself was looking for an inspector in this part of the country, and I'm like, I wonder what his experience was. And it's like I'm betting that he had some positive takeaways and he had some negative ones. And then I bet if you like crossed like, all right, well, like, who are these people that he's having this experience with? I wonder if there would be a correlation. But no, like no, I all this to say, I no, let's talk about people by name. No, no, but no, like it's like this. It's like, well, there's definitely room for improvement though, because I don't want what you experience, because that happens, right? Like I have a guy in town right now. I'll tell you this: like he is looking for a very specific RV, and there are like 4 in the country. And he found one, and he was like, "I need you to come right now and inspect it." And like, thankfully, I had availability. I had a cancellation the next day. Otherwise, I never was able to do that. And it's like, all right, well, that guy's real too. Like, not everybody can just wait. And I'm like, all right, well, I feel like, Dennis, if I had been in, and I wasn't in the area uh, where you were looking to buy this RV, I feel like I might have cleared my schedule to try and make it work for RV help. I feel like that would have been beneficial. Like, all right, the RV help here guy is here. I probably should seize this opportunity to try and do it well. But when you pull into the
Oh,
campground in Northern Illinois, we can do the inspection. Then it's all right.
there you go. Like it's still going to happen. Like we're still going to, now we just have to make it, we wanted it to be genuine, right? We wanted we called ahead to the location that we bought and said, hey, we'd like to have it inspected. It's not a condition of the deal, but we just want to have it inspected, and we want to be able to, can we video while we're there? We want to video this and put it out. And are you okay with that? And they said, yeah, we're fine with that. And so, I started calling around and trying to get people to come, because the idea was, we wanted to show like, hey, this is actually, we wanted to create a series of like micro videos that we could put out to be like, hey, these are things that you should expect, and we wanted to create it in a way, anyway, we wanted to create it in a way that felt very genuine. And so now we'll have to do it, but we'll have to do it a little bit more staged than we originally intended.
But that's the beautiful thing about these RVs, is that, like, let's say that I inspect it today and then you fix everything I found. It will break before you get to your next destination. So you can have another inspector do an inspection and another technician come out and fix what has broken in between the two. That's the beautiful part of it. And like, we actually had to put a disclaimer in our new inspections, like, hey, like, here's all the pictures of the things, but like, if you hit the curb on the way out the dealership and your cabinets fall out, like, I had no way to know that was going to happen. But I guess because we're Elizabeth's not here, she usually throws a brick at me at about an hour to make me stop yapping. So I guess my last, and we touched on it a little bit. What advice would you give? So there's all the practitioners like me, and we talked about what we want um, RV help to be 5 years from now. What would your advice to my colleagues be as we work through this rollout? What would you ask of them?
I think basically just, I want you to, we want the communication. We want to hear from you guys. We want to know what's working and what's not working. But we're also looking for solutions, and so just the idea of like, if something doesn't work, what would you, just like you're asking me, you asked me with the genie, that's what we want. Let me just go that. If you had that moment of the genie in the bottle, just ask for what you want and tell us what you need. And, we'll try to do that the best that we can. But also, I guess, in addition to that, is ask yourself, is what I'm asking for, does it service the customer the best? Does it service me the best? Does it service the group the best? Be honest with that, and we can work with those scenarios, and we can try to figure that out. Because I think that's what's going to make the best product and create the best opportunities for everybody. And if we have customers that are confident about coming in and working with mobile techs and inspectors, there's going to be a lot more of that work available. If we have partnerships with manufacturers where they feel confident that they can, or partners with like rental agencies or whatever, and they feel confident that we can satisfy their customers that are in need, then there's going to be a lot more work coming in that direction as well. So we want to continue to work on these things, and we want to hear from you with what's working in the platform and what's not working. But also, when you tell us, like, help us define which of those buckets is it. This is something that's best for the customer. This is something that's best for the group. This is something that would be best for me. Because when it's, and I don't want to say that like just the best for me is a bad thing, because the best for you might be something that other people hadn't thought of. And if we can work with that and try to figure it out, but also understand, if it's just best for you until we figure out if that's best for everybody else too, it may take more time to work through some of those issues. But everything takes time to work through issues. But I think that's what it is. Keep communicating, keep telling us, keep working with us. But maybe also understand we're here. Our whole sole function is to connect you with work and to connect the consumer with a solution. And so that that's the underlying motivation, right? That's there. So help us if you can help us with that situation. We're all about
So you're not engaged in a antitrust conspiracy to sell ad space on the internet?
it. No. You know, it's I can't tell you how many times the conversation has come up, like, you know, to sell ad space or not to sell ad space. Is it pay to play? Is it, and the scenario is we want to create enough value on the consumer side that we'll have some sort of membership for the consumer to pay for. You know, whether that's one of a million different types of scenarios that we're looking at. And at some point in time, when we feel really confident, we've gotten the correct feedback and we've gotten, you know, the information, we can offer that, we will offer it. So
Because is RV Help right now is not like really generating revenue. Like that's you're not in that phase yet, right? Like there's
no, no, and I'll dispel a myth that's kind of in that group. Like we're not paid anything from the school or the association to operate RV Help.
like as I've worked in like the startup business before, and I'm like I don't even think they're like in Series A. It's like I think they're like in the garage phase right now, right? Where like we're not even into like a Series A fundraising or investor kind of space yet. It's got to be super early. I don't know where y'all are at, but I mean, is that like are you seeking investors from the outside to try and grow the platform? And
So I think the only way that I can answer that question is to say that we had a initial round of investment. I don't think it would be considered a Series A, but we had an initial round of funding, and that round has been closed. And so we're not currently looking for investors in the platform. We have an operating budget. You know, we're self-funded, I guess, in that sense, and you know, we're moving forward trying to create a product placement for RV Help.
right on. That you couldn't have answered that any better if you tried. I knew I sensed exactly where you like every when I used to work in a solar startup, and like it was like asking taboo to like talk about the funding, and then there'd be like pictures of these like people on the wall, and he'd be like, oh, well, who's that guy? Oh, that guy owns this company. He invested this much in here. Oh, sweet. Can I tell anyone? No. Like, oh, okay. But his picture's on the wall in our lobby. So, what's going on? But all right, man, I don't want to keep us on here any longer. I think,
No, Mike, I appreciate it, man. I want to tell you that I appreciate the opportunity to come sit down and talk about this and look at it as an overarching picture. I do feel like um, I do feel like you took it easy on me today, and I appreciate that. So, but I hope we can continue to have conversations and figure out, like, you know, hey, what are the best steps forward? And I always appreciate your insight, and so thanks for sharing it as much.
yeah, definitely. And, just kind of so you and the listener knows, like, I, and this is my stance is I don't, as much bluster as I do on the internet for like RV dealers and RV industry types, I don't have an adversarial relationship with like anyone, right? And like I given like the Mike Murphy stamp of approval to like every single thing that RV Help has ever done? The answer is no. Heath was like texting me at like 1 a.m. one night, like trying to like change my mind. I'm like, Heath, we'll talk tomorrow, man. We gotta, we gotta shut down for a minute now. But I also like, I'm not gonna like, we're not gonna have you on Crossfire in here, and I know. But at the same time, if there's like a party that wants to come on here and be like, this is the worst product ever, and here's why, like I'll hear that argument, and and honestly, like I'll have you guys on a round table. It doesn't make any difference to me, but like the reason, like I kind of, I don't want to like try and like gotcha and be like, you're out to get us, right? I don't want, I don't want to do that. But yeah, there'll be another time for that one day when I get all three of you together, we'll do like a live stream, and we'll have you sitting on like the dunk tank, and people can like for $5 have an opportunity to tell you what you're doing wrong or like throw an apple at the dunk tank.
I think we should just organize that in person. I'm happy to come stand in the dunk tank and for every question I get wrong, you guys get an extra baseball or apple or whatever to throw at me. I'm down. I am 100% down. I really struggle with the online communication, but I absolutely love being able to stand in front of everybody and get to talk to it, because I feel like there's things there that you can feel that you just can't feel when you're typing on.
You lose so much of it. But to wrap it up, we've mentioned your website. I think it's called RVHelp.
Yeah.
People can go to rvhelp.com. You've got your own podcast.
I do have my own podcast. Yeah, it has nothing to do with RVing though. So, but it's called WKRP Montrose. We there was an old television show about people that didn't know how to run a radio station running a radio station, and so I live in a small community that doesn't have a TV station, does not have a local radio DJ on the radio. I don't know how many people listen to radio anymore, or terrestrial radio anymore. So it was really just a project to help people get to know the people in get to know the people in your neighborhood, Mr. Rogers, I guess. And so we call it WKRP. We know real people. And so we sit down and we talk to people in the community that have stories that you might not otherwise know. And I think that that's something that probably extends to every community, right? There's somebody that's your neighbor, that's, in your church, or is part of your, community, or in your softball league or whatever. And you would have no idea that they did that thing. And I just find it fun to try to dig that story out of people and find new interesting things about them. So
Where can people find that if they are so interested to learn about Montrose? Where would they go to find that?
Hey, Montrose is a cool place. Like, don't.
You just sold me on Montrose, so don't.
Yeah.
You're like small community mountains. I'm in, right? Like, so.
Yeah. Bring the Brinkley. Come. I've already told you. I've got space for you to park it. I've got the connections. I mean, you can stay inside with me, but since you've got such a nice rig, you can stay there as well. And great view of the mountains. But WKRPmontrose.com is where you can find it. And feel free to come on there and leave comments as well. But we've got some pretty cool stories. Like there's a great story. We have several. It's a great area for activities, outdoor activities, and we have a lot of programs for wounded warriors. And so we have a couple of great stories of some great vets that Chad is one of the stories that's on there, and he lost his leg, and he tells a great story of going down the Black Canyon, the Gunnison and the Black Canyon, kayaking, and losing his prosthetic in the process of kayaking, and how it's not well, the way Chad tells it, it's funny, but you can't laugh unless Chad's telling it. So but he's super funny. He's a really exciting guy. He's a cook. He's a chef. He does all these he's climbed Everest. He's done all these really crazy things. So that's a good one. If you're ever, looking to meet some of the characters here in Montrose, that's a good one.
I love it. All right. Well, Dennis, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We will have you on again, I'm sure, coming up, especially once I come inspect that used.
Yeah, we're gonna make that happen one way or the other. I'm gonna meet you somewhere along the journey, and we'll figure it out for sure. All right, thanks, man.